And now the hot seat. And here's your host, Melva Williams.
Welcome to the hot seat with me, Melva Williams, in our special two-part series with my good friend, Reverend Theron Jackson, the pastor, senior pastor of Morning Star Baptist Church. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This means so much to have my pastor and my friend in the hot seat. I promise I won't make it too hot because, you know. Well, so many people know you in Shreveport. You've had you've made so many, you've leaped over so many barriers of, running for mayor and state offices. But, so many people know you as Theron Jackson, but tell people who you really are.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I like to often remind people, I'm just a brother from the projects. I'm from Calcasieu Parish. I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and Shreveport has been my home for the last 25 years. And so while, many people like to take ownership of it when they say I'm born and bred, but I've been here all of my adult life. And so I'm so grateful for the people of Shreveport who've allowed me to serve in different capacities. None greater, I think, than what I'm doing now. So it's been a really great experience. I grew up in Shreveport, so most of the lessons I've learned, mistakes I've made, everything that's happened to me has happened right here in Shreveport. So people think I'm from Shreveport, but I've been here for 25 years. And I've been blessed, quite frankly, to be in Northwest Louisiana. It's different from where I'm from, but it's been a good difference. So it's been my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you've contributed so much, and so many people have just, just really seen you, like you said, grow. And I look at the trajectory of all of the things that you've been able to do. How does one do that at such a young age? You have so many young professionals that are out there. We just had Stephen Jackson, Cattle Parish Commissioner, on the show, and you've broken so many barriers. How does a young leader get that opportunity or have that ability or be able to make it happen, to be able to serve and to participate and to contribute in Shreveport?
Sure. I never set out to be a leader. I just was anxious. Where I'm from, most of the men in my family, my immediate family circle, my uncles and cousins, spent most of their lives in incarceration. And for me, I figured it was a part of what had to happen to you as a man. So I wanted to do so much before it could happen to me. And so my life was really guided by a fear of following the same path. And so every opportunity I had, I participated in sports in middle and high school, and I just was blessed through that to be gifted with some ability that gave me a scholarship. I was excited about leaving where I was from to go and do something because I felt like I could run further and further from the inevitable that would someday have to happen.
Yeah.
And but as a kid, that was my base of understanding. And so I think I've been blessed to always just be anxious to do something because I wanted to get it done because I didn't know how long I was going to live or be free. So as a result, I just was always driven by trying to accomplish things. I always wanted to make my mama proud. And so that was kind of my personal motivation. And so I think that's how it happened. I didn't ever see it as happening early or young. It was just during the time I had. I've only been the age I am, so I was just always anxious to do things, and every opportunity that I saw to serve, not lead, but serve. And I found out later that leadership is a service. And so I kind of have always thought that it was a servant leadership type of style that I tried to have. And so for me, it's I always try to lead myself out of a job so that somebody who comes behind me can do it and hopefully do it better than me.
Well, speaking of that, I am in your old job at Southern University, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I hope I got you ready.
Yeah, thank you so much. But it is an honor to follow in your footsteps and to see the pathwork that you've laid, and for so many others that have seen your trajectory and have been, excited and have looked at someone like you and said, wow, he's come from a similar background, and I think I can make a difference as well. And so that's empowering.
Absolutely.
It's really empowering. I think, like I said, we talked so many things about your trajectory, and you've been on the private sector, owning companies and businesses, and then working in the the public sector, at a university, and also being a pastor. How do you see, with all of those different, things that you've done, how do you encapsulate all of that into where you are today, and how all of those things have made this one little box?
But I think it's interesting because I didn't choose any of that. None of that was a career path. I didn't go to college to do any of that.
Wow, yeah.
All those things just kind of unfolded as opportunities to serve. And as it relates to ministry, it's basically a call on my life. I didn't choose it; it chose me. And as a result, I always hoped that I could live up to a standard and do as much as I could, give as much as I could, do as much as I could, because I never felt worthy of it. Because I always saw people who were called into ministry, which is again why I never wanted to acknowledge that. But I saw people called into ministry who were ultimately pastoring or those kind of things as people who had a different lifestyle than me, and certainly who were different than I was. They were people who I held perhaps to a false standard of perfection, and I knew I wouldn't qualify for that, and so I wasn't sure what
because
God
so
was
many
doing.
people see that, they just see what comes out, on Sunday mornings, and they see, the pastor driving the big Cadillac and pulling up in the big robe and all of that, but how many people get to see, the reality behind it?
But and mine is unique. I never tried to model after somebody else. The best I could ever do trying to be somebody else was second. But nobody could be me being me.
Sure.
So, I often say to people at our church that God doesn't bless phony. And so I think people have to learn how to grow, to desire to grow, celebrate the process, and understand that perfection is a pursuit, but it's never going to be a destination. Mm-hmm. So as a result, we keep working toward it. You want to be better today than you were a week ago today, a year ago today, but none of that incorporates perfection. And so I just think that so often we hide behind these facades of phoniness, and people hold us in high esteem because they don't know us. Hold us in high esteem because they don't get to follow us home.
Sure.
But if you follow me home, I got issues at my house. My children are tripped. Sometimes it's hard being in a relationship. I can't take the pressure of trying to be phony and do the job at the same time. So who gets me gets me. And
right.
And if I figure God orchestrates the experiences and He navigates the circumstances, mm-hmm. places us in places where people will receive what we have. I can't pass to everybody, and everybody can't be my member. I understand that, but I think there's people who I've been designed to lead, and people
right.
who've been designed to follow what I do, and so as a result, I feel free because I don't pretend,
mm-hmm.
like I don't have issues. Like some Sundays I come down, I don't feel like being here no more than y'all feel like being here.
But here we go.
But I'm here, and plus y'all ain't gonna pay me if I don't do this.
Right. Right. So here we go.
But real talk, I'm just like, some days I drag myself to the service, if you will, to the pulpit and to the service of the people, knowing that this ain't been my week, and that last night I didn't do something that God was gonna be pleased with, but He kept waking me up, which means I got another chance.
Right.
So, I just go try to say I'm gonna do it better today than I did the last time. So I think for folks who can accept that, people are leaving religion and leaving organized religion because they can't be real. They can't be real. They was at Maze last night and they gonna sing Amazing Grace today. All right. And who's tripping about that? Like right. God's but we've been sold in this country to westernized religious structure. We've been sold a supremacist mentality of what it means to be religious, and it's just not real. And so when I was young, if you clap and dance, which is naturally black, then that was somehow demonic. Well, guess where we got that from? We didn't get that from the Bible. We didn't get that from God. He made us that way.
Right. It's in our soul. It's in our
your hips just move different than other folks' hips. You got to be you.
Right.
You don't try to be somebody else. God intends for us to uniquely live through that. So I think it's just empowering people with truth like that helps us as well.
Yeah. So we're gonna be here a while. We got a whole show to do. So don't you worry. So listen, I want you to stay in the hot seat because I have many more questions. We're gonna talk a little bit about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. What the what? We're going to talk about Christianity. I have so many other questions to ask you. So you stay in the hot seat.
Yes, ma'am.
And you don't go away. We'll be right back in the hot seat with Melva Williams.
Coming up next on the hot seat, Dr. Jackson talks about police brutality and the Kaepernick protest.
We'll be right back with more hot seats.
The G is for gifted. The G is for genius. The G is for greatness.
I'm a G. I'm a G.
I'm a G.
I'm a G.
Come to Grambling State University, where everybody is somebody, and be a G.
You can catch me 6 days a week on iKoala Radio. You don't want to miss the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. It's just music, baby.
Since 1985, J&S Electronics has served the architects with superior electronics from transistors, resistors, and fuses. We carry HDMI cables and a wide selection of AV cables and connectors. We also have a large supply of batteries and tools to handle your projects. Need Cat 6 or CCTV systems? Call us at 318-631-8675 or come see us today at 6437 Greenwood Road.
Catch the hot seat with Melva Williams, where we have an opportunity to talk about politics, city events, all sorts of great things that's going on in the city of Shreveport. You don't want to miss it. The hot seat with me, Melva Williams, on B45.
Back to the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. And I'm here with my very special guest, the senior pastor of Morning Star Baptist Church, Theron Jackson.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for staying in the hot seat. We didn't allow you to leave, so you're here.
Try not to sweat publicly.
Okay, good. Well, listen, I have a lot of questions about, and I think you're the perfect person because you have this blend of political savvy and Christianity back, information that can kind of share with Americans where we are with police brutality and African Americans and the challenge that people are facing as people continue to be Black in America and moving throughout their day.
Well, I think it's in 2016 is still a devastating reality, I might say, that the same things that existed. I was listening to Malcolm X and a couple of different folks just on tape not long ago who were talking about police brutality. This was in the 1960s. And here we are in 2016, and I think we brag quite a bit about progress and where we've come. And it's amazing how there is this underbelly of reality where things have not gotten better. Arguably, I would suggest perhaps in the last 8 years, things have gotten worse. And they got markedly worse because of, I think, a backlash of electing President Obama, quite frankly, and what that meant, what the undertone of that was. And it's been such a vicious backlash of public hatred, where for years it's been present, but it's just kind of been underground. Now it's popular to be above ground and to empower yourself by saying things that are hateful. And I think those things are bad, but I think it is exponentially worse when actors of the state, those who are employed to serve and protect, when you hear all of this conversation around law and order rather than service and protection, but there's a different mentality that goes along with law and order versus service and protection.
Let me just hop in right here because you said those two words, law and order, and we were watching the debate a couple of weeks ago with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They're in their first presidential debate, and that was the response to his when the question was asked, what can we do to bridge the gap? And his response was law and order. How do you think African Americans and other people in the community perceive that answer of that is the answer, is law and order in bridging the communities of, folks that wear the blue and people that are African Americans?
Well, I think clearly my own perception of it is so silly. It's like deciding that we're gonna go west by walking east, and that'll get us there sooner or later. I mean, it's asinine, in my opinion. I think when you start thinking about bridging the gap, and then you start talking about stop and frisk, things that have been seen as unconstitutional, and you start thinking about what it means to, again, enact law and order rather than service and protection. Why is it that one side of town gets service and protection, the other side of town gets law and order?
And stop and frisk,
and
possibly.
Stop and frisk, yeah, and those kind of things. I think that when you are an actor of the state, that you ought to be, again, and I mean whether it be a policeman, anybody who acts on behalf of the state and who's paid by the taxpayers to do so, ought to always be careful about how it is that they serve and protect. I think that there is a sense that there is a target still on African American men, and that the value of lives that happen to be Black have been diminished consistently, and that they have no material value of which others are duty bound to respect. So I just think that sounds like you and I are having a conversation in 1964.
Wow, it
instead
does.
of 2016. It doesn't sound like this should be a 2016 conversation in a progressive nation, which I question our the progress we've made, given what happens to people who, especially when there is this obvious juxtaposition between how law and order, service and protection is executed. Just a few weeks ago, you remember there's a man who killed 5 people in a mall in Houston.
Right.
They took him to jail.
He made it.
They took him to jail.
He was apprehended and taken to jail.
Well, just a few weeks before, a man whose car stalled was shot and killed on the spot by actors of the state. That's hard for people to really account for that and square that in their mentality. How a person who is trying to blow up people in the United States, who's seen as a terrorist, can be taken in, wounded, but not mortally wounded, not fatally wounded, and yet another person who is selling cigarettes in in New York, or selling CDs in Baton Rouge, can't even make it to a trial, don't even make it to a jail cell. They are executed on the spot. Something's wrong with that, and that's why I think you see the public backlash, you see people reacting the way they do, you see what I consider to be civil disobedience beginning to move around this country, and whenever it begins to affect entertainers and athletes and others who we get to see all the time, then that means something. I think that's what's happening.
And I think of the historic picture in the Olympics where you had 3 people on a podium and you had the gold medal African American winner stand there during the national anthem with his fist in the air. And you fast forward to now, and we have a member of the National Football League, Colin Kaepernick, and he is, when people are standing, he is taking a knee.
Absolutely.
So how does that happen in this
Well, I think what's interesting,
and what does that mean in athlete, in athletics?
I think what he's doing is simple. I think what happened that ensued after that, if you will, is what complicates it to me. Because what he did was real simple. He said, I feel that in America, folks are particularly black people, are not finding justice. There is the lyric of justice, but not literal justice for them. And so there's an issue, and he sees this dangerous duality or this paradox, and so as a result, he protests by taking a knee, which the First Amendment gives him the right to do as an American, because he is an American. The problem I have is what ensues after that, the anger, the vitriol, the hatred that comes from people who suggest, well, so many people fought and died for this country. So many black people fought and died for this country, and when they came back, they called them something other than what their name was.
Than Americans.
So they fought in every war that the United States has been embroiled in. There's been African Americans giving their lives, but they come back and they will not have freedom. They're not seen as veterans equal to other veterans. And so as a result, I'm confused about what all of this bitterness, and it's largely coming from people who are emotional without the benefit of intellect, because all of us really, quite frankly, should be a little concerned about Francis Scott Keyes, who writes in whatever it was, he wrote the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
But this was a man who owned slaves. The third verse of the song talks about no refuge for the hireling or the slave, and talks about them being led to a great. It is a scenario that we have ignorantly and blindly been exposed to, and it was it was hidden in plain sight.
Sure.
But we just say the Pledge of Allegiance was the other thing. There was a little girl who didn't want to do the Pledge of Allegiance in some city in the United States, and people got all embroiled.
Sure.
She's
And
disrespecting
even during
the
the
veterans.
Olympics.
I'm like, but the Pledge of Allegiance, most people don't even know it was a socialist Baptist minister who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance in 1892. It wasn't called a Pledge of Allegiance until 1945, and I might add, they didn't add one nation under God until 1954.
Wow.
And we are ignorantly patriotic, or blindly patriotic to things we have no idea about. And so as a result, I'm okay because I understand. I think anybody else who will invest themselves in an understanding and an intellectual understanding of what's going on, then you could understand that people have a right to do that, and you choose to do what you choose to do. But a part of it is being in America is allowing my neighbor to be free enough not to stand if I choose to stand with my hand on my heart.
Sure, because it appears as if, when he was taking a knee, that it was quietly done, but it it was blown up so huge. How does it, in a silent protest that he didn't previously announce, how does that draw so much attention when you have one man sitting on the bench minding his own business? He's silently protesting. How does it happen when he's just?
I mean, the thing is, again, in America, I don't know what, and I'm not interested in satisfying people so much, but in Charlotte, there's a riot. Mm-hmm. He simply takes a knee. You don't like either one. I mean, what should you do? Right. In other words, you should shut up and stay in your place. I mean, if there's not an issue of being quiet, America allows us as citizens of the United States of America, and I want to tell Donald Trump, Barack Obama is one too, he's a citizen. But citizens of the United States of America have the right to be able to protest peacefully.
Right.
And taking a knee is one of the ways to do that.
Exactly. Well, okay, this has been great. You stay in the hot seat, and we will be right back more with Theron Jackson in the hot seat with Melva Williams.
Later, Dr. Jackson gives his advice for African American males.
We'll be right back with more Hot Seat with Melva Williams. Like us and share us on social media. On Facebook at The Hot Seat with Melva Williams. On Twitter at The Hot Seat Show 1.
Since 1985, J&S Electronics has served the architects with superior electronics from transistors, resistors, and fuses. We carry HDMI cables and a wide selection of AV cables and connectors. We also have a large supply of batteries and tools to handle your projects. Need Cat 6 or CCTV systems? Call us at 318-631-8675 or come see us today at 6437 Greenwood Road.
You can catch me 6 days a week on iKoala Radio. You don't want to miss the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. It's just music, baby. Welcome back to the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. My special guest today on our two-part series. We've had a great conversation, and I've truly enjoyed it. Is Reverend Theron Jackson, the senior pastor at Morning Star Baptist Church. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We just talked a little bit about, some of the issues that African Americans face. What's advice would you give African American men in particular?
And I say this with great mendacity, I guess. I hate to even think that we have to do this, but I want to say for the safety of young men and boys, because my son is 19, and I tell him the same thing, college student, that obey the law. As much as, obey the law. The bottom line is we don't have choices. You obey the law. Remember, you were born on strike 2. And obey the law. When the police stop you, if you happen to be stopped by police, cooperate. Prayerfully, no guarantees, but prayerfully, that may help. But listen to, first of all, obey the law, that we might not be victims. But if something should happen, then we gotta not be belligerent, because we need to live to fight it in court.
Right.
We don't need to be executed on the spot. So I think we have to be sure that we are respectful in our dialogue. We have an expectation that we should receive deference in return. I hope that while we're educating African American boys as to what to do, that we're educating public service officials as to what to do and what not to do as well. Because I think they ought to know these are boys, these are young men who may be afraid, who may be nervous, whose first reaction may be to run, because I know what's been happening to everybody else.
Right.
I think there's an interesting case in Massachusetts that I'm wondering what's going to happen. Supreme Court of Massachusetts, the state Supreme Court of Massachusetts, threw out a gun possession conviction by a young man who did in fact have a gun, but they didn't know it until they chased him. Sure. Because he looked like somebody else when there was no physical evidence except that it was somebody who was black in a black hoodie. And they chased this boy. He ran as soon as the cops came. And so it was interesting that the court says that it was not probative for him to run, because given the frequency of stop and frisk in Boston, given the fact that people have been shot by the police, that it was a legitimate thing to do, to fear and run. And so it wasn't, so they threw out the case, and it wasn't seen as flight because they really didn't have any reason to chase him. And that's interesting. I hope that somehow or another that precedent will inform law enforcement. Because again, I don't know, I hear people say all the time, 99, 95. I don't know the percentage. I think most of the police officers are good people.
That's right.
They may be
Sure.
in a bad systemic culture
Sure.
that causes, because it's not just white police officers, black police officers who are shooting African American men as well. So I think it is just a handful who give them a bad name.
Sure. One
and
bad
we have to
apple
remember that. Yeah,
spoils a
because
bunch.
if my son wants to be a police officer, I want to be able to support him in that. And I want him to be a good police officer who understands his service and protection, not just law and order.
Yeah. Well, the hot topic now is, the presidential elections. And we have two very different candidates. You have Hillary Clinton, who has appeared to prepare herself for the presidency through, being a senator, secretary of state, just a long history of public service. And then you have a businessman, Donald Trump, who has owned businesses and been on television shows and now has, surprisingly to most, television political analysts, has, catapulted his way into this position. What do you think viewers need to know about making a choice and things that they need to consider for undecided voters when they're making that choice?
Well, I think they need to decide that they have to vote. I think that we may not like
President
the
Obama
choices.
said, "Don't boo, vote," right?
Yeah, we may not have the choices that we prefer, but this is what we have. I think that's the short-term answer, is that we got to prepare ourselves to vote. Whoever that might be, you got to go and vote. Everybody needs to understand that too many people gave way too much for us not to exercise the franchise of voting, and so we have to do it. So I think made up minds that we have to vote is number one. But I'm concerned long-term what this election has done for the future of the United States. I think we're going along laughing and smiling, but this has opened the door for people to lower the standard for who can be president. And I wonder where we're going, from here this point forward. You just kind of need one loose cannon before all the other loose cannons come out.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So when making that decision, I know that people need to consider healthcare and jobs and all of those things. But if you were to tell viewers in Shreveport maybe one key point that they need to be focused on, what would that one thing be when they're making that decision?
Well, I think the most important thing is to vote your conscience. That people, you've heard the platforms, and note that we hardly ever get anything we can feel, but vote your conscience and think about what kind of a world we want our children to grow up in.
That's so true. Well, thank you for those great final words, and thank you for being in the hot seat with me. It has been my honor to have you here. I've had a great day. I hope you have too. In our special two-part series, we've had a long day, so we really appreciate you staying with us. And we'll see you next week on the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. Take care. You can catch me 6 days a week on iKoala Radio. You don't want to miss the hot seat with me, Melva Williams. It's just music, baby.